Hello, welcome back to Up the Villa. A big one just before Christmas. Aston Villa v Manchester City at Villa Park. Early kickoff on Saturday. Joined by Justin. How you doing, mate?
Good day. How are you? I don't know what I was going to say. Good day.
Good, mate. I'm all right. There's a club in crisis coming back to Villa Park. And it's not Aston Villa. It's Man City who are in... Well, I mean, it started off that they were in a bit of a poor run of form, then a bit of a blip, then a crisis, and now it's just unraveling into chaos. So on this episode, we're going to go in depth on Man City. We're going to take a look at them. We're going to have a look at how they've been playing, what's been going wrong, just touching on Man City as well. We'll talk about Villa and where we're at, etc. And we'll talk about another player that doesn't play for us anymore. We'll have a little chat about Jack Grealish. So, Villa fans, Man City fans, make sure you're smashing the likes on this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you're new and get involved in the comment section down below. Just in Man City this season, it's not going very well. And it feels we're getting to a period now where I'm looking at Man City and I'm thinking, I'm seeing no characteristics of what I have seen from a Man City team from the journey that they've been on under Pep Guardiola. I remember going to Villa Park and us getting absolutely smashed. I think it was that game when there's that video outside Villa Park and you can just hear the Villa fans like singing and we like 5-0 down and it's really eerie and dark. And you know, we've had some real tough times where their football has done some serious damage at Villa Park. The way that they play, the way that they move it around, the power of this Man City team that we've seen in recent years that are able to just waltz through teams. And a lot of that now has completely evaporated. And I watched them against Juventus. I watched them against Manchester United. And like what I'm seeing is like just players like walking around and not pressing, not engaging. Older heads that just look like they've got no confidence and looks like some of their legs have gone slightly. And I think recruitment has been a massive problem for them. I think they've had a couple of windows where they've got it horribly wrong. They've sold key players like Alvarez. Haaland needs a bit of a break. He can't get one. You know, they're playing with two out-and-out wingers sometimes, with Doku and Savinho, whereas before they were playing with Grealish and he'd slow it down and they'd have more control. I'm watching Pep, and yes, Rodri's out, and you're thinking, you know, that he's trying to find some solution, whether it's personnel, whether it's tactically of moving players around. He can't find the solution. And I think this sometimes, you know, I think that big question has always been around Pep, hasn't he? Like, what would he do if he had a bad team? And like, now he's got a bad team and he can't find the answers. So I think they are in a real dark place on the pitch. And I think hopefully come Saturday, we're able to add a bit more pain to it.
Carries on,
Yeah, I mean, because what we don't want, Villa fans, is we don't want the normal. And I'm going to say it so hopefully it don't happen. I think they've got 1 win in 11. Just don't be that team, Villa, at the weekend. That just let them turn into like prime tiki-taka and they're back. So, yeah, let's hope we don't do that. But what have you made of them, Justin? Because it is a big talking point of how they have fallen off a cliff. You know, they've won 4 in a row. And this season, they're a shadow of their former selves.
Yeah, I think it is the talking point in the Premier League this season. You know, you look at the way Liverpool's resurgence, Forest, how well they're doing, you know, or the Chelsea, their resurgence. But the big question this season is what has happened to Man City? Like you say, for being basically untouchable for 4 seasons, the first team ever to win back to back titles. you just didn't see a drop off like this happening. I didn't see it happening. And then Pep after the game yesterday coming out saying he doesn't know what to do. That's mind blowing from a manager of his experience, what he's won in the game, how much he's lauded as a genius to not know how to turn it around. And I think it's a lot of things have happened at once to them. I think they've obviously had these charges hanging over them. Apparently, that's done now. The hearings have been heard, and we're going to hear in probably March what the actual sanctions are going to be. Have they had an inkling about that? Do the players know that there's a huge thing coming down the line for them? Nobody knows. Have they switched off because they know a lot of them might probably be leaving in the summer? I don't know. I think you've also got to add into, and I wrote it down here in my notes for today, is that a few of the players look like the legs have gone. Kevin De Bruyne, 33
Yeah.
years old, he does not look half the player he was even last season. He doesn't affect the game anymore. He's invariably get dragged off. But you look at the players around him, I thought it was a mistake bringing Gundogan back. He's 34. You've got Kovacic, who's 30. You've got Silva, who's 30. You've got Kyle Walker's 34. They've got a team full of players that are basically all seem to be running out of steam at the same time. Added to that, the key injuries to their most important player, Rodri. He goes and wins the Ballon d'Or and he's out all season, basically. That's a huge blow, but nothing that other teams don't have to deal with, and they've got an embarrassment of riches. And again, I think another point you made was they've bought poorly, probably for the first time, looking like that Nunes yesterday from Wolves, huge signing to them money-wise, and he hasn't done it for them. I really don't like Doku. I think he's all bluff and fluster. He gets on the ball, and I think he picked the ball up on the left hand side yesterday. And in my head, I said, let's just wait for the 12 step overs, and that's they came. There's no end product. He basically reminds me of Adama Traore. He looks good. He's got the physique. He's got the stature. He's got all the moves, but there's no end product to him. And you've got a player like Jack, who I know we'll come on to, who can't get in this team still, who's been totally underused by Pep. He had one good season, but he got everything coached out of him that we loved about him. And it's not happening. And then to top it all off, the player that scores 50 goals a season has just stopped scoring goals, So we all know how hard it is to win games in the Premier League at the best of times. But when you've got a striker that guarantees you goals, that just can't hit a barn door, added to all the other problems they've got, it's a recipe for disaster. And I didn't see it coming. I tweeted yesterday, excuse me, Man City are a really poor side, and they are, and I got the inevitable replies, don't say it, we're playing at the weekend. Look, any team in the Premier League on their day is a threat to anybody, and Man City are no different to anybody else. They have got wonderful players still, and the players that aren't firing, the Fodens and the Silvers and all these players we've spoken about, at any given moment, it can click, and that run has gone on long enough now. Everybody expected this run to end a while ago, didn't they? And it hasn't. So who knows? But we've got to try and take advantage of where they are and make sure we keep them where they are.
We have got to try and be the best version of ourselves on Saturday. I think that's very important. I think what's happening as well is there's a lot of Man City players that are sort of looking around and needing help from others to get the best out of themselves as well. And I think they're not sort of going on the pitch fully focusing just on their own game. They're having to need help from others. And we've touched on sort of like Bernardo Silva's one of them, I think. Gundogan's one of them. Kyle Walker's one of them. Gundogan in the middle, that's just not working. You can run through that. And I think we've got the average positions here from the game against Manchester United. And what you can see is they're still fairly fluid in what they're trying to do. They've got the three at the back. Guardiola can sometimes go into that central midfield area, which we saw we saw against Manchester United. We've got the left back that's gonna bomb on. Sometimes if it's Rico Lewis, then you'll see him going into central midfield, and you can see Gvardiol that's going to be the player that's offering that width. But you can really see that there's that three at the back. And I think because they've not got Rodri, instead of Silva being that player that's out wide and he's offering that width, his position is a little bit more central. You're having to see De Bruyne that's going to be moving out to that right-hand side. And just that front 4-5 just isn't as fluid. And the game against Villa at the weekend, I imagine it's going to be Rico Lewis that comes back in at left back. Stones was on the bench. So the team can be anything because Pep's searching for that. He's searching for the answer and he hasn't found the solution yet. So if we take a little look now at some of the areas that what we can expect to see from Manchester City, and if we have a look now at the some of the images of when they have got the ball, and what you can see is what I was just touching on. So we've got the back two, which is always an area that I feel like Aston Villa are very, very good at exploiting. And I think this is an area that we will try and exploit at the weekend. You can see Gvardiol from centre-back has gone into central midfield. And you can see Núñez has gone out wide and offering the width on that left-hand side. And Doku has come inside a little bit more central. We've got Silva hugging the touchline. We've got Kevin De Bruyne who's drifted to that right-hand side as well. And then you've got Foden that's just in that sort of number 10 as well. So there is rotation there, and that's something that we can expect to see within their system. Again, we've got Doku out wide. We've got to make sure that we're really watching when Man City get into these little areas, that the little rotations, if Foden comes short, then we've got a runner going in behind as well. So I think that's something that Villa have got to make sure we are fully aware of. Again, we can see that the width is coming through this area through here on this side and this side. And I think they're not committing as many players forward because I think they're worried about being short in these areas at times. Again, we've got another scenario where Núñez has gone wide. So these are all sort of like the build-up of what they're trying to do and the areas that they want to hurt teams. And I think if we have a little look now at some of the areas that I think Villa can possibly get joy from this game, we'll do the predicted lineup tomorrow. So we'll predict the lineup, etc. But Manchester United played with a 5 at the back and posed them problems. Villa have been starting to play with a 5 at the back as well. So one thing that I think we touched on about the reasons why we think they're not as good, Man City, and the big thing that I've spotted this season is the Manchester City press. That it's just not the same. It's not as engaging. Like, you're allowed time on the ball, you're allowed space, and there's a lot of times that I've been watching Man City at times during games where they're just walking around, they're just drifting around, and I think that's something that is very unlike a Pep team. Like, you don't get time on the ball, but against this Manchester City team this season, you get time on the ball, and we'll start to see it from where Manchester United start to get joy. Like, this was the back pass that Ahmad was able to get onto, really good running, and I think, I was just watching this game thinking, Ollie Watkins, just run, just press, put them under pressure, and that's something that I have really noticed. But again, the goal that they conceded, time on the ball. Look how much time Martinez has got. There's not a Manchester City player anywhere around him. And he's able to take a touch, bring it forward, play that long ball. So if you're Pau Torres at the weekend as well, you're looking at that thinking, I'm going to have time on the ball here. So I think Villa have got a lot of different weapons to hurt this Manchester City team, because if we do play vertical, we do play straight through them on that half turn, we're going to be able to expose the Manchester City back line. And there's two areas that I really think are the areas where you can really hurt this Manchester City team, and it's this area. It's the area behind the back 3 or 4, and it's the area that's in behind the Manchester City midfield. Those are the two areas. You can get the ball in those areas, you are going to cause absolute chaos for this Manchester City team. Again, we can see the ball, it's in behind that zone there. If you've got those players that are in behind that Manchester City midfield, like I showed you earlier, then you're going to pose problems. That long ball over the top, Ahmad's able to bend his run and get through there as well. So that's something as well. We've got another scenario here where the Manchester City midfield is quite flat. It's quite square on. We've also got that space through there. That is the area that I want Morgan Rogers to be able to get on the ball. And he's then able to look for those passes that can go in behind for someone like Ollie Watkins. And then again, playing out from the back, we know that Villa are going to be playing out with Martinez, time on the ball, a lack of a press. So these are all the things that I've highlighted that I think in turn Villa will be able to exploit as well. But Justin, what have you sort of made from actually watching Man City this season?
Yeah, I think everything they normally do that's successful has just stopped working, hasn't it? And I do come back to the age profile of their players, and they're real key players. And I think belief, a lack of belief. I always think that to get to like an elite level, you players have obviously got to be very good, but they've obviously got to feel comfortable there and know that they are at that level and they are better than everybody else. And this run of form has literally dragged, and they're just, you can see their confidence levels are on the floor and they don't believe they can win at the moment. And to lose that game against Man United the way they did, the last few minutes, I know we did the same against Forest, but we're not a team that's just won 4 back-to-back Premier League titles. It just doesn't happen to Man City. So I think it's a few factors, isn't it? It's them, the belief going. Pep seems to have run out of ideas, dare I say it, a little bit. I mean, he basically alluded to that after the game. And players out of form, which is something that we know all about this season. We had a brilliant season last season, and then we just suddenly hit a bit of a wall this season with a lot of our players that were outstanding last year not being able to get themselves back up to the levels that they found themselves in last season. And I think to an extent that's what City have got. They've got players in every single position who are on their day world class, and they're just not showing that, are they? And long may it continue, and hopefully at least another week. Hopefully.
Yeah, to be fair, I don't think anyone in football feels sorry for Man City. To be honest,
Nope.
Like you've had a good run here, lads. So I don't think anyone feels sorry for you. But let's
I tell you what. Sorry to cut over you. Let's just see how good Pep is then, because he's had a run ever since he walked into management. He's been at clubs who basically they were the best in that league anyway. Barcelona, Bayern Munich. And they had unlimited funds, most of his clubs, City especially. And he's been able to go out and just keep buying and buying and buying the best players. And now it's not working for him. So, and he hasn't got a transfer window. Well, he has, but, they've got to be careful what they're doing now. And they've failed in the last couple of transfer windows, I think. So, this genius coach, okay, coach yourself out of it. Let's see. Let's see how good you are.
Yeah, it will be interesting. So let's switch it back to Villa then. I get your thoughts on sort of like where you feel like Villa are at. We had this one comment over the weekend that really sort of stuck with me in my head, and it was along the lines of Forest are absolutely flying. Villa have been really poor and had no chance at the weekend. And I was kind of like, well, going into that game, we were level on points with Forest, and we're only 3 points behind Forest. So if Forest are flying, I just found it a bit strange that context of how sort of they were sticking it on Villa but praising someone else when there's fine lines between the two teams. On reflection, I think I've done 2 episodes since the game, and I think both times I was just very disappointed with the way in which we lost. I actually feel like parts of the performance were pretty fine. If we won that game 1-0, we would be saying classic Emery, etc., and move on to the next one. But I think the manner in which we did lose, we do need a bit of a reaction, and I think this probably is the best game that we could have, because we know what's going to be needed and what type of performance is needed to play against this Man City team. Like we've spoke about how bad Man City are, but they can probably still turn it on and play really well, and we've got to be at our best to put in a performance that we can get the victory. So I think it is probably a good game for Villa, because you can't go into it with sort of like feeling that we can just be average. We've probably got to be at our best. I imagine Emery's got a full week, so it's going to be an intense week tactically, pinpointing how we're going to play against this Man City team. But Justin, you were at the City ground then. So
Yeah.
how are you feeling now, a good few days after that game?
I'll tell you one thing that you just reminded me of. We were walking out the game on Saturday night, and I was walking behind two Forest fans, and I heard them both say, "I tell you what, if this carries on, I reckon we could have a go at the title next season." And they were genuinely talking like that. So that just shows. I think they're a little bit deluded at the moment. Forest, they're having a good season now. What was the question? Sorry, I've just forgot what you said.
How are you feeling like going into this, but sort of after the
Um,
game at the weekend?
Yeah, I mean, we threw it away, didn't we? Forest can say what they like; they're having a good season, but that we definitely threw it away at the end. We switched off. We were defensively poor. We made poor decisions in poor areas, and we got punished. And it's happened too many times, and we can't keep sitting there game after game after game saying, "Oh, we've got to get better. We've got to get better. We have got to get better. We've got to make better decisions." Especially seeing games out when we're 1-0 up in the 87th minute. But Man City will know all about that, because they did exactly the same, the day later. So both teams coming into it with, I'm going to say, we're in patchy form, they're in poor form. We're at home. We've got to be confident. We've got to be positive. We've got a really good side, and if we can, we've won 3 out of those 4. That's the way I'm looking at it. And we're going into it against a team that's lacking belief, lacking confidence, and I want to double down on it. I want to make sure we start really well. I want to make sure that we get the first goal, and defensively we're solid, and we basically put them to the sword, and we beat them at Villa Park last season. There's nothing saying and they were in far better form. That sparked their run off, didn't it? After we beat them, I don't think they lost again after that. So yeah, I'm going into it like I do every single game, thinking that we've got a really good chance, and we are currently 6th with 25 points after 16 games. The last 4 seasons, finishing in the top 4, you're looking at 67, 71, 71, 78. So you want to be in the early 30s by the halfway mark. If we are 5 points off 30 points with 3 games to go to the halfway mark. So if we can win a couple in our next 3, that puts us just over 31 points, which, it ain't going to be a million miles away from qualifying for the top 4 again next season. And we haven't had a really good half of the season. So if we can get into the halfway mark in decent position, 30 odd points, I think that gives us a decent, hopefully do a little bit of business in January. And I think we'll be in good position to kick on in the second half of the season. But this is a huge game, but I think we're more than capable of winning it. I do.
Yeah, I do too. I think if we are anything like near our best, I think we can definitely win this game. Somebody who probably hasn't been anywhere near his best since he left Villa, to a standard of which we all probably hold him in such a high regard of how good of a player he was for us, he's Jack Grealish. And his goal scoring run at the minute is over 40 games now without a goal. And I think when he left, when he left for about a year, for that season that he was playing for Man City first time, I didn't want to see him win anything. I just didn't. Like, it hurt. He was the player that we all loved, etc. But once he won one, I was completely over it, and like I hold no sort of any ounce of any anger or just I do still really like him and stuff like that, and I do wish him the best in everything that he does, really, because he's a likable player, and he was class for us, weren't he? But at
Yeah.
Man City, like I just don't get it. I really don't get it. I slightly understood how he played for Man City when he'd keep the ball, knock it back, full control. Like I understood why he did that for Pep, and because there's so many creative players, keeps the ball. But I just don't get what goes on, because he's on the bench now. He might start. He's been playing in central midfield this season. Like, what do you think of it? Like, like, do
I
you
think
think
it's sad.
But do you think? I think when he looks back on his career, obviously he's going to look at his trophy cabinet and he's going to be like, "Wow, yeah, Champions League, Premier League." But as an actual player, I don't think he enjoys it there.
I was gutted he left. I understood why he went there, and he has achieved what he wanted to going there. But he will never, ever, ever have had the feeling of winning. If he'd have won one thing at Villa, it would have meant more to him than winning 10 things at Man City. And he can say to his blue in the face that it was a good move. And I suppose financially it has been, trophy-wise it has been. And ultimately, I suppose that's what football's about, winning things. But they would have built a statue of him at the Villa, and he would have absolutely loved it. And he chose to throw it all into to win things, and that's his choice. That's his career. I'm not here to tell anybody to do anything with their life. They do what they want to do, and I'm gutted he left. I think ultimately on the pitch, he's just declined. He's got worse and worse and worse. What frustrates me most about it is I watch Doku playing on that left-hand side, and he's allowed to do what he wants. He's allowed to go at players. He's allowed to try and take them on. And it always seemed to me that he basically held Jack back. He wouldn't let him do that. Every time he fronted a player up on the left side, he'd have to turn back round and lay it off. And it's a shame, And I always said I would have him back at Villa, but we are getting to the point now at 29, 30 next season, where I don't know. I'm starting to think I'm not sure. I do want him back now.
Thing is, though,
Financially, I think.
Justin, the problem you'd have with that is, if someone said to me, you could have Jack Grealish or Tyler Diblin, I'd have Tyler Diblin.
I think I haven't seen enough of Diblin over a longer period of time. I think he definitely looks an absolute player and a prospect, but I'd want to see him over. I mean, the money they're talking about for him, it would be a huge gamble at the moment. I think he's a talented lad. I think if you had prime Jack back at Villa, if he came back now in the January window, hypothetically, and you got him back to 90% of what he was when he was at Villa, he would be brilliant on that left-hand side for us, a position we just can't get anybody to play well in currently. He would be great. But as I say, now his age and the money and everything that it would cost to get him back, we are close now, for me personally, to saying that it's just not worth it now. Unless he came back on like a free or a really low fee, because we've got to be very careful with FFP, and we can't just, let's say we sold one of the forwards in the summer for a really decent amount of money. I wouldn't want to spend a lot of money bringing Jack back just for the sentimental reason of bringing Jack back. It would have to be for the right reasons. And now, I don't know whether he could reach those heights again. I don't, because he hasn't played that well for so long. You'd be basically blind. If it wasn't Jack Grealish and you bought that player from City who hasn't scored for 40 games and was £100 million player, you'd be going, what are we doing? He hasn't done it for 2 seasons.
Yeah, because I remember when I do Transfer Hub and we are firing it back up in Jan, guys. It is firing back up. But like when you get linked with a player and it's like he scored like 5 goals and 2 assists, and you look at it and a lot of the comments are always like, yeah, but his goal scoring is like, if you looked at Grealish's stats, like they're absolutely awful. Like
you'd be signing him purely on historical reasons and what he did for us. But that era has gone. Dean Smith's not here anymore. We're not floating around the bottom end of the Premier League. We want players that can impact games now at the top end. And Jack at his best, fantastic. I'd have him back tomorrow. But at the moment, there's too many question marks over him. And can he reach those levels again? I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. So, problem is, Justin, the early kickoff. You don't back the early kickoff.
I did on
because
Saturday.
Because what happens is the favourite doesn't win. Now, who's the favourite in this? Who would you be more shocked if they win?
You've got to put City, haven't you?
Okay, so Villa will win then. So right, what's your score prediction going to be, Justin?
Oh God! I mean, I'll put this down. Definitely put down both teams to score. That's
Yeah,
without question. Um, I just hope we can nick it over the line. I think it's going to be a really, really tight game. Very similar to the Forest first half when both teams were just feeling each other out. I hope we can be the aggressor. That's what I want to see on Saturday. I want us to be the aggressor in the game. And I'm hoping it's our day and we can sneak a 2-1 or even a
yeah,
3-2. I think it could be a few goals in it, maybe.
yeah. I'm gonna go 2-1 Villa. I think we nick it. I think, do you know what sometimes happens in football? I found this quite a lot. You know, if you have a game before where you concede late on, sometimes that next game you do the exact opposite, and it goes for you. So one thing that I haven't mentioned is stay in the game, because this Man City team fold, right? We've seen it in the Champions League where they're 3-0 up and drew 3-3.
Yeah.
We've seen it against Man United. We've seen it against, was it Brighton, that they were pretty comfortable and then they end up losing. So stay in the game. We get a late goal. I think we can get a winner. So there we go. That's our match preview. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. So make sure you hit the like button, comment your thoughts, and subscribe. Up the Villa.
Oh.